Pioneers to the West, Part 2. Missouri, 1883. If someone offered you land for free, would you take it? This is just what the U.S. government did when it passed the Homestead Act of 1862. A homestead was a piece of land a person could own simply by living on it for 5 years. The government had taken this land from American Indians. Many people took the government's offer. Families moved west with their children to start a new life. Advertisements like this helped create excitement for the Homestead Act. Even when the land was not free, the price for it was very low. Ruth Chrisman. Ruth Chrisman headed west from Missouri with her family in 1883 when she was 11 years old. Her father raised cattle, which he sent west by train. The family, Ruth, her parents, her 3 sisters, and her 3 brothers, followed in wagons. Along with the family, those 5 wagons carried everything they owned. After meeting the train, they traveled another 137 kilometers, 85 miles, to their homestead, which was 23 kilometers, 14 miles, north of Broken Bow, Nebraska. Ruth was born in Waverly, Missouri. Her family moved to Broken Bow in the Nebraska Territory. You can follow their journey on this map. Number crunching. Between 1860 and 1870, the population of Nebraska grew from 29,000 to 123,000. That is almost 100,000 new people in just 10 years. Life on the prairie. Soon the Chrisman's family had settled in Nebraska. Ruth, called Babe by her family, helped with the work. She gathered wild fruit such as plums and raspberries in the nearby canyon. She loved the long summer days when the prairie grass was taller than she was. Many pioneers like Ruth's family lived in houses made of sod, which is just dirt held together by grass. Winters were hard on the open range, meaning the areas of open grassland where cattle were raised. Storms swept across the prairie, and cattle, and sometimes people, would get lost and freeze to death. When she was 17 years old, Ruth started teaching school. She was in the classroom when a blizzard struck. She saved the lives of her students by taking them to a nearby house until the storm passed. It took 3 days. Between 1854 and 1929, more than 100,000 children went west on orphan trains. See panel below. Helping Hand. Some children went west without their parents. Poor and homeless children were sent on trains west from New York to live with farm families. The Children's Aid Society, which organized these orphan trains, still serves needy children today. Though many of these children were treated well, some were forced to work very hard. New homesteaders. Both men and women could own a homestead. A person just had to be 21 years old. So, as each of the Chrisman sisters turned 21, she claimed her own land. First came Lizzie, followed by Ludi Bell, and then Hattie. Unfortunately, by the time Ruth was 21, all of the best land had already been claimed. On the scene. Families on the prairie had to make their own fun. Ruth remembered the following stories about her prairie childhood. Since our neighbors were such a long distance when we visited each other, we spent several days. How happy we were when we would look out and see someone coming over the hill. We knew they were coming for the night. We only had 3 rooms in our sod house, but always had room for all that came. We would take down a bed or two, put the table outside, and be ready for our dance. My brother played the violin, so we had our orchestra at home. We often danced till daylight. This photograph of the Chrisman sisters was taken in 1886. From left to right are Hattie, Lizzie, Ludi Bell, and Ruth. Ruth never liked the way she looked in this picture. From Sea to Shining Sea. In 1845, a U.S. magazine writer said it was his country's manifest destiny, or fate, to stretch from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. By the end of the 1800s, that dream came true, as western lands were settled and turned into the new U.S. states. Number crunching. From 1850 to 1896, 15 new states joined the United States. The nation more than doubled its size. This painting by artist John Gast is called American Progress. It was painted in 1872. The country is shown as a woman moving from the cities on the East Coast past the Mississippi River and heading toward the West Coast. But this destiny came at a price. Throughout the 1800s, thousands of American Indians were forced off the land that their people had lived on for hundreds of years. They were sent to live in special places set up by the government called reservations. Those who refused to leave faced the force of the U.S. Army. This is a sad chapter in U.S. history. Starting in 1838, the U.S. government sent thousands of American Indians from their homelands in the east to Oklahoma. This journey became known as the Trail of Tears, building a new country. As the stories in this book have shown, life was hard for U.S. pioneer children. They had to work as hard as the adults. Many died young, but those who lived could be proud that they had helped build a country. Mapping migration. Most settlers followed one of these trails to the west. Traveling a well known path made the trip safer. This map also shows the route American Indians in the east followed to reservations in the west. This path was called the Trail of Tears. John McWilliams. John McWilliams headed west to California in search of gold. While he didn't make his fortune, he had plenty of adventures. George Staples. George Staples' journey to the Salt Lake Valley was interrupted by the time he spent living with the Sioux. He remained friendly with local Indian tribes for the rest of his life. Laura Ingalls Wilder. The Ingalls family lived in many different places throughout the Midwest. As an adult, Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote about their experiences in books that are still popular today. Ruth Chrisman. The Homestead Act allowed women, such as Ruth Chrisman and her sisters, to own their own land on the American prairie. These women rode horses and battled the elements right alongside men. This is the glossary. Please use this page to help you understand any of the bolded words that were in the text.